Thank you very much. Absolutely no pressure whatsoever. I think we've already had that moment, though, the panic moment, because ironically, Elaine was let down by technology today.
Yeah, I should have just phoned for a taxi, but I used an app. It was a nightmare. That was my horror moment for tonight, was the half hour it took me to make a 10-minute journey.
Oh, God.
Yeah, not fun.
No, not fun. And for the person who lost their Fitbit, they work better if you wear them on your wrist. So, anyway, I think best place to start this is with Twitter, or X as it's now known. I can't. I literally just can't. Every time I see the logo flash up, I just think this is the mind of a teenage boy who came up with this. And he's been trying to do this for a while, hasn't he? Because the X.com has been going since PayPal days.
Yeah. So going back to pre-PayPal. So X.com merged with Confinity, a company that Peter Thiel was involved in. He's a huge tech investor. And they merged to form PayPal. That buyout of PayPal that then followed and all the success of PayPal created what's known as the PayPal Mafia, which was like that first big cohort of really huge, well-backed entrepreneurs and investors in Silicon Valley. It was nearly like the birth of this whole idea that we now have of Silicon Valley. Started with that PayPal scene. And yeah, Elon Musk just really, really likes X. He is one of the world's richest people with the mind of a teenage boy and no one around him saying no. So now we have a social media platform that's called X that he thinks will become an everything app.
Yes, the Everything app. I have thoughts on this and none of them are good. I mean, the Everything app works in somewhere like China, so WeChat and Line, all those kind of ilk of apps, they are the Everything app where you do payments and all sorts through it. I don't know about you, but I cannot, under any circumstances, imagine me giving anything more than my username and my login details to Twitter/X/Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Because I just don't, not that I don't, actually, no, I don't trust anybody, but, I particularly don't trust what's going to happen here because, I don't know about you, I'm less active on Twitter than I used to be, mainly because it's an absolute nightmare. And the main fault is that blue badge, not blue check, because the check itself, as people have pointed out to me on numerous occasions, is white. So there's one of your pernickety grammar thing, but it's a white badge on a blue background. But now because they rise to the top of everything, the quality of discussion on Twitter is gone through the floor. A lot of the responses to Elon Musk will all be the Elon Musk fanboys going, yeah, this is a great idea. And then when he reverses that plan, going, yeah, it's a great idea this is transparency in action. And I'm just going, no, this is a nightmare. This is like a corporate meltdown in action. I mean, he bought it for 44 billion. What's the current valuation on it?
It's about a third of that, according to Fidelity Investments.
Literally like a lighter and a pile of money, and he is setting fire to it. And now he's done one of the biggest things that I actually never thought they would do, which is take a recognized brand and dump it in favor of something he's been trying to make happen for more than a decade. And it's like, stop trying to make X happen. It's not going to happen.
It's It's the very Mean Girls comment, but it's true. Stop trying to make X happen. This idea of an Everything app working in the US market, which he's primarily invested in, like he thinks of the world as the US market, I think, in a lot of ways. You can kind of see that in some of his behaviors. Like the way he tried to fire people was very much US employment rules and
did not work here.
Anyone else's employment rules. And no, it did not work here. It was an absolute shit show. Am I allowed to swear here? Because he just doesn't, like for someone who is this international entrepreneur, billionaire, just seemed to behave as if he didn't realize that international rules make things differently in your different offices and all that kind of stuff. And WeChat works in China because there's a great firewall of China. They don't have access to Instagram. They don't have access to WhatsApp. And this app has mimicked a lot of those social media platforms and also integrated payments technologies that were adopted by services. Like you can pay a utility bill through WeChat. You can book hospital visits through WeChat. Like this actual infrastructure has taken this on board. Do we see that happening with the current iteration of Twitter X under Elon Musk, when it's seen as an unstable platform even for advertisers to be involved in? Like they've dropped 50%. And the advertisers? The
advertisers they do have. Quick straw poll here. How many people are on Twitter? Okay, how many of you get the foot fungus and the earwax ads because that's all I seem to get, or the random things on Wish that you don't know what they are, and you'll never find out, because if you click through to it, it just brings you to Wish. But they're just weird. They're not like before. You would have seen car ads on Twitter and all that stuff, and now you get like the stuff that won't give you brain damage if you push it in too far. It's weird.
Really bad T-shirts. Like I just got advertised.
Oh, the personalized T-shirts, yes.
Personalized, but they're just targeted at what looks like Elon Musk's fans, and I'm not one of them, so they're not T-shirts I'm ever going to buy. But what's kind of interesting there is like I do hear a lot of this narrative of people saying like I don't like Twitter anymore, it's gone wrong, but people are still there, and they are still there. Like you're not using it as much, but are you still using it?
Occasionally, I don't post half as much as I used to, and I've always been careful about what I post, mainly because my account is linked to the Irish Times. If I post something controversial, it blows back, and we have strict social media guidelines, which I think most companies, bar a couple of exceptions, do. But I think, my interaction on Twitter has gone well down. And actually, we'll come to Threads later, but when Threads came out, I did actually manage to circumvent the whole thing and sign up. And it was a much nicer place to be. And people are like, oh my God, it's boring. I'm like, no, it's actually nice not to have to deal with, somebody kind of doing the sea lion thing and popping up and going, well, actually, every time they think that you are saying something that they don't agree with. And if you criticize Elon Musk on Twitter, RIP your mentions. It's the equivalent of criticizing Steve Jobs years ago, where all of the Apple fanboys would swarm, and it'd be like, well, no, he is a massive genius because he did this, this, and this. And you're like, yeah, but what about this thing that failed badly? It doesn't matter. There's always a reason why something doesn't work for Elon Musk, and why it's always the best idea that he's ever had. I mean, first of all, they can't all be the best idea that he's ever had. Second of all, the platform is worth a fraction of what it was when he bought it. And, we're kind of getting to the point now where it is getting so toxic. If you want to make money, some of the moves that he's made just defy all reason, like ditching the brand. I mean, but when I go into Twitter now, it still comes up, do you want to tweet? And it still comes up, Twitter is all over it. So it's the worst thought out rebrand ever.
Like, not just thought out, not planned. Like, it just doesn't, like, a rebrand at this scale with a platform that has 250 million monthly active users, like you'd normally see something like this very carefully planned. The redirects from x.com to twitter.com didn't work on day one. The rollout of the branding started on desktop first, was very slow. I think it only really, I heard on the news on the way here, it only hit the iPhone app like now. And
still hasn't hit my iPhone app, by the way.
I think it's just happening. Maybe right now when you open it up, it'll have it. But the destruction of a brand like that, like, people would pay huge amounts of money. If he was to sell, he could probably recoup a lot of the money he's lost in the valuation of Twitter if he just sold the Twitter brand right now, because that little bird that he seems to hate so much is already present on most websites. It's present in a lot of other forms of media. Like you'll see, say, on posters or on chyrons across television and stuff like that, you'll see that little bird and reference to Twitter and stuff like that. Tweets entered our language as naturally as Googling. Like, that was a really, really powerful brand. Whatever you can say about Twitter and its problems, and there's problems on the platform, any platform with that amount of users will have problems. The value of that brand, analysts have disputed, but like somewhere between tens of millions to hundreds of millions. I saw one analyst say it's probably worth $1 billion alone, that brand, because it's ubiquitous, it's well known, it has far reach across many, many nations, and very recognizable, even the coloring of it. And it's gone now. Like that really is setting a torch to your brand value, and all because he's just really, really passionate about X. But what's really I find interesting as well, I hear the talk as well of people saying that it's gotten worse under Elon Musk, that things are worse, the content is worse on Twitter. Now, I was already pulling back from Twitter as a user before this takeover happened. I was just becoming a bit more conscious of my own use of social media and use of technology. Like in the work that you do, it's hard not to kind of take those things on board. And I did notice that it did change under Elon, but what I found at first, it was actually quite fun. It was like a party at the end of the world. Like people were just like, oh, get out the popcorn. It's all going to be over soon. And let's just see what happens. And it was actually, it felt a bit like a moment that Twitter hadn't had for a while, like a little bit of collective insanity. And then that trickled off. But I have seen that some of the noise from my feed has actually dissipated because people are using it less. And for my user experience on Twitter, maybe less is actually more. Like the people that have been tweeting less, maybe I don't follow enough accounts that I wasn't getting too much noise. I also amn't that popular on Twitter. Like I'm so delighted to see people here at this talk today because I'm not a big personality on it or anything like that. And very rarely have I gotten caught up in a mentions kind of debacle where I've had to kind of mute it because it just got out of control and it's just people commenting and spreading negativity and that kind of thing. So I've had a very lucky user experience on Twitter. And I have heard from other people that that's what's happening as well. But what really stuns me about these platforms, because like with Threads as well, Threads is having this problem where they got 100 million signups faster than ever. And that was phenomenal growth. Like, like you've been reporting on this stuff longer than I have. I've never seen a platform take off
it was impressive.
The way Threads did. They had an advantage. They had the Instagram user linkage and stuff like that, and they had the fact that Twitter was looking like it was on the brink. People were looking for an off-ramp. They had a lot going for them, but still, 100 million users in that amount of time is insane growth. Like, we've just seen that growth with ChatGPT, which I'm sure we're going to talk about as well, in the space of like a few months, and that was insane. So for that record not to even have lasted very long is a crazy.
No, it's probably the quickest. The quickest broken record.
I know, and it's an insane record, like 100 million. These are huge, huge numbers. But now they've had a 50% drop off in that engagement. Now, a 50% drop off in that user engagement when you've had such an incredible hockey stick of growth from 0 to 100 million, like, why are you sweating over 50% drop off? Like, they get so caught up in massive numbers in the tech world and scale. Everything is all about scale. And they never really seem to think of like what they've actually achieved because everything has to be bigger. Like Apple wouldn't be happy being $1 trillion company and then it becomes a $2 trillion company and then it's now a $3 trillion company. Now, I really like to put numbers like that in context. Is anyone in this room, because I can't see anyone's faces, I don't want to make any assumptions, is anyone in this room under 32? Wow, okay. Right, we've got a couple up there. If you had earned $1 a second since the moment you were born, you would still not be a billionaire. That's billions. So for 3 trillions, like this is insane amounts of money. And like Apple we can talk about separately and stuff like that because they actually are quite clever in what they do, I have to say. But these massive companies, they're always about bigger and all of it is about scaling. And they seem to have completely lost the plot on what they were building to begin with. Twitter retweets were started by users. Requests on some of the key features that we have in Twitter, like replies, mentions, and stuff like that, were driven by users in the early days. And that's how these platforms actually became what they are. And now we have Threads saying, we've got a 50% drop-off in user engagement. Now we have to create hooks. Now we have to try and draw people in. We're going to start posting the good threads to Instagram to try and draw people in. And they're not letting it happen organically. And they're going to lose what could have actually turned into something good by not letting it develop a personality and develop a culture.
See, I agree with you there, but you know they're also being forced to do this because people are saying, "Where's my direct messages? Where's my only people I'm following feed?" And that was some of the issues with.
Because they rushed the launch because they were like, Twitter's failing. We got to get this out there right now.
And you know, and that was to be honest, in a way, it was kind of it's worked for them. Now, part of the reason why they've got those 100 million signups is because it's automatic. So if I go into Threads, I automatically follow everybody I follow on Instagram, and then as they sign up, I automatically follow them. And even though I can't get access to it anymore because I'm in the EU and they've blocked all EU traffic for now, I'm still being signed up to follow people, even though I can't. I can't search, I can't post, and people are still following me because of the same thing. Now, I will say that Mark Zuckerberg, I think, is a bit more philosophical about the numbers, and he's kind of saying, well, 50% drop-off, still a huge achievement for where we are. But you're right, in all of the user features, it's been users that have driven it, and the same, actually, you mentioned Apple. I think, does anybody here remember the launch of the first iPhone? It was US only. I don't think it even had 3G on it. It also didn't have the App Store, and it wasn't meant to have the App Store. The App Store was something that came a year later, and it came because people were jailbreaking the phone. Originally, this was going to be an end-to-end closed ecosystem. Apple was going to have control. Yes, and Apple was going to have control. Now, if they had stuck to that, would we be seeing Apple as a $3 trillion company?
No.
I don't think so. And there's some tech journalists who get crap over that because originally they said, this is never going to work. And people come back and go, oh, well, look, now we're in like 2019, 2020, and look at the iPhone.
They did figure out how to recoup that money from the App Store, because the payments made through the App Store and any kind of transactions made through apps through iOS, it recoups a substantial amount of money there. And they're under a lot of pressure to change that policy now, because developers are kind of getting fed up with the amount of money that Apple makes off of their apps.
And the control that they have, because they can say yes or no. It's gatekeeping, whereas with Android, you can go outside the App Store. You take a risk every time you do it, and I keep saying this to people. You click that little box that says, install from unknown sources. You don't know what you're putting on your phone, but at least you can do it. So they don't have quite the same, I think, there's not the same control with Android, which is both a good and a bad thing. And we will come to big tech later, but I wanted to talk about AI, because obviously that's big in the news at the moment. You've just done a whole podcast episode about it with Patricia Scanlon. And, you know, there's a lot of thoughts about AI. Is it going to kill us all? Is it going to be Skynet? I got a message from my brother the other day showing me something going, oh my God, is this going to be the end of humanity? I'm like, no, it's really not, because AI doesn't know what it doesn't know at the moment. It quite confidently told me that I worked for Silicon Republic, which I have never. No offense to Silicon Republic, absolutely
Yeah,
no.
no,
but I've never worked for Silicon Republic. I also write for the Irish Independent. Never written for the Irish Independent. It's told me that Jess Kelly, who is the host of Tech Talk on News Talk, was the host of the Drive Time show and was well known for her political insights. And while Jess is very clever, I don't think politics is her first love. So that was all ChatGPT. And people, we've seen the case of the guy who walked into a court with a court filing that was created by ChatGPT, and ChatGPT just made some shit up.
Yeah.
Which, you know, people are kind of looking at this new technology and thinking, this is fantastic, it's so clever, but it doesn't know what it doesn't know, and it will make stuff up to fill the gaps.
The users clearly didn't know what they were doing there, because like I don't think that case of that lawyer in New York, I think it was, where his filing basically had citations to other court cases that didn't exist. So because he had used ChatGPT to put this briefing together, and he'd asked, you know, because it has to look like a proper document, so it'll need to have references and citations and stuff like that. And it did that, and it, you know, it is at its heart of hearts a text generation engine. So it knew what that thing was meant to look like, but it didn't. It's not a search engine. It didn't go and find things and cite them correctly. It just generated them. And this user, I can't imagine he went in knowing that they weren't real. He believed them to be real. He believed that ChatGPT gave him real citations.
It was well written.
But it's like, the reason why he was confused there was because that's what he was sold. That's like, ChatGPT was launched, and then like Microsoft's talking about integrating it into Bing and stuff like that. And they're selling you this idea that this tool brings you answers. And that's not what it does at all. Like it generates text. Let's talk about what it actually is. And it approximates, and it just kind of jumbles things together. And it's all based on statistically, it thinks that in this query that you've given it, that this word should follow this word. That has absolutely no founding in giving you references and real statistics or anything like that. It's just giving you auto-generated stuff. You need to check it all. But people weren't told that that's what it was, and were using it willy-nilly to make their filings because maybe they were under time pressure.
The case in point being Google's own launch for Bard, where it gave the wrong answer to a question in the presentation. So, I mean, look, obviously, you know and I know, artificial intelligence as a concept has been around for a long time. This particular version of a generative AI is something new. But is it going to take all our jobs?
Well,
it's going to take my job.
No.
There's journalism, there's an AI journalism tool now.
GPT-3 we've been writing about for a really long time as well. So GPT-3 was the language model that underpinned that first release of ChatGPT that really kind of took off. Well, technically GPT 3.5, we believe, and now they're on to GPT-4. But that version, GPT-3, that was around for a good few years. It had written an article, it had written loads of articles, it had written sports reports that were quite good. Sport reporting and financial reporting is where it's actually very good. Because
Financial reporter.
I know, but don't you hate writing those?
Yes, I do, absolutely.
Every
absolutely
journalist I know hates writing those reports.
Markets reports and company earnings.
And the reason why you don't like doing them is because they're very samey, and numbers heavy. You're not an accountancy, you're a journalist, so they kind of hamper your creativity in that way. But they always will have the kind of same format. It's like, company reported these numbers, it's a difference of this on the last report, a difference on this year on year, and this is what it means. You can write an analysis around that, but the actual reporting of the data is fairly straightforward and simplistic. Mind-numbingly dull for you. ChatGPT, GPT-3, whatever, can create that really, really well. it can do sports reporting for the same reasons. Again, it's not going to give you analysis on why it was so heartbreaking that the Irish girls didn't get that win against Canada, but it will tell you the results of the game and exactly what happened play by play. So it can do that basic level stuff fairly well. But GPT-3 was also writing articles about itself long before we had ChatGPT, and I'm sure you read those things. And,
some sort of weird
got a
meta.
fright. Yeah, but it was just showing you what a good predictive text engine this was. But I don't know how much you've played around with it in terms of writing and stuff like that. It is a great support tool, I think, for writers, especially when you're under time pressure and newsrooms are cutting your budgets and cutting your time and cutting like the amount of resources they
It's just a downward spiral then, though, really, isn't it?
That's the thing. We don't want to encourage newsrooms to do that. Stop doing that. Pay writers. But like sometimes you do want to get a lot more done than you have the capacity to do, and that's the people that go into that kind of form of work are like that. They're really passionate and they want to do a lot. So if this can maybe help them achieve a bit more, that's good. If they use it well, if they are conscious in how they use it, and if they do it in that right kind of way. Because what I don't feel it can do, like maybe it can in future, but I still think like when I've asked it to do things like write anecdotes into a piece or anything like that, it rings hollow. You can just, not that you can tell it's not human, but it's just like, I'm not pretending that I could tell an AI generated article from a human generated article, because humans are capable of being bad writers as well. But it just, when I know that it's ChatGPT writing it, it rang hollow. It just didn't feel like a proper human experience. So that could be from a bad writer, but it also could be from AI generation. So you're not going to get personality. And I think people who have that real skill with writing, which is actually really hard to cultivate, that can bring personal experience to things and bring analysis to things, that becomes more important in our job. And that's just in our job. But there's so many jobs that this can be used in. And I like, let's go into this because I know we kind of disagree here, but a world where you can look at where automation has been used a lot in the job is in piloting. And there's a lot of concern there in what has happened in terms of studies have been done into crashes and the causes of crashes, and obviously they have to do those kind of research works, and a significant percentage of them happen when something goes wrong with that automation system, the system that's as a support system for the pilot, and their ability to manually control and take over in those scenarios is a little bit absent. They're not as skillful with the manual controls as they may have been in the past. And that's a problem. And it's, you know, it speaks to the fact that training now, when you're becoming a pilot, you are learning more about working alongside an assistive technology, but you can't assume that that's always going to be there to assist you. Systems can fail, tech can fail you, and it will.
It frequently does.
It frequently does. And you have to be able to troubleshoot. And I do think that the more assistive we get with technology, and we do get a bit, our expectations are really high with low friction when it comes to technology. And I do think troubleshooting skills are something that I find are failing in general across a lot of people that I interact with.
Well, now.
And this is where I think we might have a problem with the future of work, essentially. It's like we're relying too much on the tool being there. And then what happens when it's not?
Yeah, I mean, look, I agree with you to a certain extent. I have completely forgotten how to hail a taxi on the street because taxi apps, I literally stood in Barcelona one day going, okay, how do I get a taxi? You know, you stick your hand out, you know, one will arrive. But there are a lot of skills that have fallen out of favour. I mean, like I can change a tyre, but I don't know how to shoe a horse. And at one point, that would have been a fairly essential skill. Also, I mean, I got a book for my 8-year-old, almost 9-year-old, on forgotten skills. And it's stuff like tying knots, you know, stuff that I never learned how to do. But anyway, making pastry, that kind of thing. I mean, how many people here during the pandemic learned how to make bread or banana bread? Because I can safely say I haven't made banana bread since 2021, even though I have about 1 million frozen bananas in the freezer. I just can't bear the idea of making it again. Like, I like to bake. I like making bread. But I haven't done it in a while because it's so easy to go to a shop. But during the pandemic, having that skill when, you know, we were all kind of a bit afraid to leave the house and, you know, there was queues to get into a shop, I had that skill to fall back on. So yeah, I agree with you on that in that respect. But I do think there's an awful lot of skills that will naturally fall out of favour. Like if you do databases in work, you know, data entry used to all be done manually. Now it's done with a computer program in minutes, and people have moved on to other skills as a result. Yeah. So while AI like Google has made us stupider, I think that was we don't retain information as well as we used to because we know it's always at our fingertips. You know, it has kind of pushed us to do other things instead, and those skills have replaced, and in years to come, somebody else will come up with a fantastic solution that means we no longer have to make bread, or go to the shop to buy bread. It'll just be beamed into our houses or something, and people will bemoan the lack of, being able to sew on buttons or being able to go to a shop and buy the bread, or, all of these things. All these things are cyclical. Like lamp lighters used to be a big thing, and then electricity came in. I don't know how to troubleshoot an electricity supply, so I do sort of, but not without electrocuting myself.
But if the electricity supply went down, you'd know how to operate a torch or a candle or something like that.
If you have them in the house.
Yeah.
And if
you
they
don't have candles?
I have candles. I have working batteries, but being able to find them in a blackout is another thing, because then obviously we all have these things on our phones, and like how many people have an alarm clock in their bedroom? Anybody?
Good old radio alarms, you can't beat them.
But what happens? Is your radio alarm a plug-in one?
Oh yeah, no.
What happens if
I have the phone as a backup?
Yeah, what happens if the phone dies and there's a power cut in the middle of the night? We've all seen Home Alone. We've all seen Home Alone. We know what happens.
I would just say, slept in. This is the thing actually with tech, is it has created a space and an expectation around workers in particular.
Sick days
of being always on, always available. And I know that there's things like what's the thing in France that they're trying to bring in here, the right to switch off. And
yes, where you can't email people after a certain time, or you get your wrist slapped.
Yeah, and there's people who kind of have policies at work where they will maybe schedule their emails rather than send them out of hours, or they'll have something in their signature that will say these are the hours that I work. I don't expect you to respond to me unless it's within your work hours. And the fact that we have to do that is mad. And I do think there's an element of there's these tech companies building these technologies saying this is to make things better for you, just to make you better at your job, and it's really just about turning you into some sort of robot automaton worker in many ways. And I really against that. I really, really rail against that, because if my radio alarm clock and my phone fails to go off, I'll be late for work. Big fucking deal. Who gives a shit?
It's easy to say that now, but when you're the one on the breaking news shift first thing in the morning and you wake up an hour later, there is a panic element.
Has it happened?
It has,
you shit yourself. And also, if you shit yourself on a work day and get through it,
try not to, but
would it be one of the most formative experiences you will ever have at work. If you constantly are having it easy at work and all these assistive technologies and everything's making it handy for you, you may never survive a bad day at work, because all those bad days make it so that you actually can get through a really big crisis, and they train you that way, and we maybe are losing a bit of resilience and stuff like that in this kind of way as well. I'm just really sensitive to what we lose when we kind of hand over so much to these things.
You mentioned big tech there, which is obviously a huge thing at the moment. Obviously, I think actually, going back to the Twitter thing, one of the biggest surprises of the year has been Meta's rehabilitation, because all of a sudden we're seriously looking at Instagram and going, this is a viable alternative to Twitter. Do you remember, only a few months ago, Meta was hit with a massive fine for some issues with their data protection and the transfer of data between here and the US and not protecting it adequately. That was a blockbuster fine, and that's only in the last couple of months.
And that was their most recent fine.
Yeah, there's a few of them going through the system at the moment. There's a few going through the courts.
I think there are 9 of the top 10 fines issued by the DPC.
They're 4 of the top 5. Which I think Amazon is the other one that was issued in Belgium. Belgium or Luxembourg, but big tech. We're all fairly hooked into it. Is this a problem? Should we be looking at, I know in the States there's been some rumblings about breaking up big tech. I think Meta had to sell one of the smaller companies, Giphy, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, recently because of competition issues. Now we're looking at Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard and them trying to get that through and over the line. Big tech is basically hoovering up all of the good tech in a way. And, when it comes to AI, you're talking about, say, the likes of Microsoft, which, by the way, all of these co-pilots sound remarkably like somebody just opened a box, blew the dust off Clippy and put it back into the system. That was the thing we all hated. Remember the thing that would pop up and go, it looks like you're writing a letter. It's like, no, I'm not. Please leave me alone. Yeah. And they finally retired it, and now it's back, but now it's just called a co-pilot instead. All of these companies, they're making a massive investment in AI. OpenAI obviously it was a startup, but it's taken investment from Microsoft. What chance do smaller companies have, particularly in the AI space, when you have the massive tech companies basically hoovering up everything. And, you know, like Google obviously has its own AI, which they were working on for a very long time and then caught in the hop by OpenAI. I mean, are we basically destined just to be, you know, the slaves to big tech forever?
To be fair to Google, I don't know if you can say they were caught in the hop. And this actually came up in the conversation we had with Patricia Scanlon on the episode, where it was like they were doing AI. They were just keeping it in their R&D base. They weren't releasing it onto the world. What caught everyone off guard was that OpenAI went, here you go, and gave it to everyone. No one saw that coming.
But it did force their hand, because they were kind of like, I mean, Google have been hands up saying, look, we've been doing this for a while. And they have been doing it for a very long time. Yeah. But they were also trying to work on it to the point where they felt it was ready. And then, you know, OpenAI came out of nowhere, released this, and kind of forced their hand into releasing Bard.
Which is exactly the problem with everything, is that none of these companies are actually interested in helping you or doing the right thing in any kind of way. They are only ever interested in the bottom line. They pushed out Bard because OpenAI and ChatGPT threatened their bottom line. And that's the absolute fact. And Microsoft is heavily investing in AI because it will affect their bottom line. All of the investment money right now, after a cratering off post-pandemic, is being focused on AI. So what small companies can do now is what they're all doing, is like saying that they're an AI company. Say you're an AI startup, you will get investment. Good luck.
It's the new buzzword.
Yeah, it's the new, like, here's money. Now, they are getting better due diligence and stuff like that in the startup world, but it is like all of the investment is going towards AI. So if you're not in an AI business, you're probably not going to get investment. So you might have a great business idea, but your motivation and your push will be to pivot to AI, whether that is relevant for you or not, just to get money. And like, do we get the best tech and the best companies out of doing that? Absolutely not. And like, these motivations are just so flawed at the end of the day. Like, there is like some really useful stuff, I do think, with Copilot. Now I haven't got to test it out yet myself or anything like that. They just have a few not a few, I think they have a significant number of pilot testers working on it, and it is going to come at a significant cost. It's $30 per user per month.
Yeah, I'm not paying that.
To use it, yeah. Because
I won't even pay $8 a month for Twitter, so I'm not paying that.
Yeah, oh God, no. But like, so that's going to have its power users and stuff like that, and people teasing it out and big companies using it. But like, if Microsoft gives me a tool that tells me, okay, so I'm in sales and I can now auto-generate my sales pitches as like cold emails and just superpower that, and I can like press one button and send personalized cold sales pitches to 1,000 contacts. Why would I want to do that? Like, is that really effective? Those people are probably going to be able to tell if it was written by an AI if you don't vet it. So if you do those 1,000 emails and don't vet 1,000 emails, like, there will be errors in there. We have seen that these things produce errors. And like, and you have to check the errors because you don't know where the errors are going to arise. And you don't even know what they're going to come up with. Like, they probably email you, Ciara, and say like, oh, how are your kids and stuff like that. Just guess that they have kids, but they also be like, and how's work at Silicon Republic? And you don't work there. They can easily make those mistakes. And then your sales reputation is damaged. You look like a fool. Like, why would you do these tools? And why do we want to scale these things up? And this is the thing, they're obsessing with scale. You can send more marketing emails. You can contact more clients. But it's like, is quality not more important than quantity in these?
See, I ignore the obvious automated pitches, and I can tell them now. Because one of them refers to me as Mara. I still get emails from Mara. My name, it does not even look like Mara, but anyway. So those ones automatically go in the bin. There's also the ones that come in that say, oh, I see you wrote about this article. Here's this link that has absolutely no relevance to it. Can you please please update your article with this link? I'm like, I'm not doing that. Yeah. And they also go in the bin, and then it means that person then gets spammed. So then they will forever hit our junk folders. But there is a good use of AI because the junk, basically all those junk filters are getting far smarter, and they're filtered out all the nonsense before it gets anywhere near my inbox. Speaking of nonsense, I mean, look, we've established I have kids. I write about them frequently in the Irish Times, just in general, because they're my testing pool for a lot of things. I have a 9-year-old, almost 9-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and technology obviously is big for them. We have we're not quite at the point where, you know, smartphone use is an issue because neither of them have a phone, but they do have iPads, and we have to tightly control access to tech because, look, you know, this magic window into the world, addictive magic window into the world. And if you let them, obviously they'll just sit there and veg on it for the day. But I think we've seen an awful lot of issues with children having unfettered access to the internet, people not understanding what their children are actually doing, either online or on video game consoles. I stood behind a child who would say wouldn't have been more than 10 in a video game store once. He was swapping Hitman for Grand Theft Auto. And neither of those games were suitable. I was kind of looking at him going, this was past the stage where you were doing those God's eye, nonsense, where the worst thing that you'd hear was the word bitch. These were the ones where one of your tasks was to go and catch the supposed innocent starlet in a compromising position. That was quite graphic when you went into it. But I was kind of looking at it, and his parents were standing right beside him, and nobody at any point said, it's an 18s rated game, maybe you shouldn't be playing this, because we tend to kind of assign a benign intent to a lot of technology. Social media, great for meeting up with old school friends, also not great for children's mental health. I think the Surgeon General in the United States has actually said that this is a risk for children's health. Social media is not a great thing. I mean, what's your opinion on that? We talked about our own experiences with social media, but you must see, I suppose, parents concerned about it with their kids. You spoke to Patricia Scanlon, obviously. She's got a great company with Soapbox, but that's ethical AI, and their voice tech is concentrated on improving literacy. So it's a good use of technology, but there's this whole other side of it that, to be honest, as a parent, terrifies the life out of me. The longer I can kind of stave it off, the better, but we're already into the Roblox era, so it's coming fast.
Oh my God, don't go near Roblox.
Too late, it's too late.
That's one of the sketchiest things I have ever come across in all the coverage I've ever done. It is so shady. I could go off on that, and a big thing. Patricia Scanlon is a great example of that, like AI for good and kid tech with responsibility behind it and stuff like that. And getting the plug in here as well, she did an extended interview. So the interview in our main feed is a shortened version of the interview we did with her, and then the extended interview will come out next Wednesday and have a bit more from her on that kid tech side of things, because we spoke to her mainly in her role as an Ireland's AI ambassador, but obviously she's the founder of this kid tech company. And she was fascinating, and what absolutely blew my mind was that she said the tools already exist, that because we know that kids go online and we know that they like to interact with voice online when they play games. This is a social outlet for a lot of kids now. Like, we can't deny that genie is well out of the bottle. Like, if you as a parent are probably anxious about letting your kid go online, but also in this modern age, it is how they are socializing with a lot of their friend groups and stuff like that. I see that with my own nieces and nephews. So you have to kind of weigh that up. Like, you don't want to cut them off from these social aspects. So a lot of that is gaming, and it's with voice and stuff like that. And the technology exists that if they are in that world and they don't have restrictions that other people may be able to talk to them that are beyond, approved friends or whatever, the tech exists that you could make it so that any kid, someone that's registered as an under 18 or whatever playing that game, that no one with a designated, recognized by AI adult voice could interact with them. It just could be cut off.
Which would be brilliant.
Completely. Wouldn't that be great? That technology exists. None of them implement it.
I would like them to do one simple thing, and that's just, there's a general chat in Roblox where if you just limit it to their friends, because she's only allowed to chat with certain people online. She has an approved friends list. She's not allowed to accept any friend requests that I don't see first. But it's very difficult to police that chat. So you have to make sure that you're familiar with all the age restrictions. And to be honest, it's something that I find difficult enough, and I deal with this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Anybody who's not familiar with technology, or struggles with technology, or even just has a passing knowledge of it and knows that they should be doing certain things, it would be almost impossible to navigate your way. And this is supposed to be a game aimed at kids. They should make it easier. And this is the issue I have with a lot of the tech companies, is that they should do a lot of things, but they don't. And they should be responsible, but they aren't.
Yeah.
And there's no change in that.
And it's not like we don't have frameworks for how to police these things. Like, they exist already. Like, if I wanted to hold an event in Dublin with tens of thousands of people, not even millions, not even hundreds of millions, but tens of thousands of people, I think it's like a 36-page document from Dublin City Council that you'd have to go through in terms of like your safety obligations. Like, but if I want to set up an app that's going to convene millions of people in a public town square, I don't have to do any of that. Like, there's GDPR and stuff like that. But like to actually, you know, make sure the people and their individual interactions are safe, you don't really have to do anything. And when it comes to kids, like if you wanted to create children's content for television, you have to reach a really high bar. Like you can't put out any dross when it comes to children's television and children's programming. But when it comes to YouTube,
no, I would disagree with that. I've seen some of the kids' programs.
When you see the stuff on YouTube Kids, then you see the real turds of this.
Yeah,
kind
the things where they just have like balls of dough and they're opening stuff constantly. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And even just the auto-generated animations of all sorts going on. Like it's just I don't have kids. And I just am so sympathetic to what it must be like to be a parent right now. I cannot imagine the stress you're under.
That is the least of your troubles with kids. Trust me, you never get a lion again. I'm being told we're just about running out of time, so I just want to open up to questions. If anybody has a question for Elaine from the audience at all, just wave your hand. And I can't see anything from here, bar the first 3 rows. So does anybody have any questions? Oh, there we go. Look, lights.
House lights.
There should be roving mics there.
Anybody? Oh, yes. It's a race to see who gets there first.
Thank you both very much. Super interesting. I went to the Barbie movie earlier today, so movies are on my mind. You talked a little bit about, will AI take my job? But how do you see this playing out at a workforce level? For example, the writers' strike in the US right now.
I love what they're doing with that writer's strike. And Hollywood is very, very powerful. Like, people will get really, really upset if we only get reality TV to watch in the next year or so. Like, it will really piss off a lot of people. And the fact that the likes of Cillian Murphy and Emily Blunt and that literally walked out of the premiere of Oppenheimer, one of the most anticipated films of the year, when the SAG-AFTRA union joined the strike, is monumental. And it is, I don't know how closely anybody else here is following it, but it is to do a lot with AI being used to supplant a lot of their work, like to use AI to help with script generation and script ideas and stuff like that. And if you want to see how bad that will be for content, just look at Netflix's output. Like a lot of its show concepts seem to be derivative of an algorithm, and that's not necessarily good. Like, it's just showing that, no offense, Ma's love true crime. And it's just like, let's make loads more true crime shows. But like, none of it actually has to be good. It just has to hit that bar of tick box true crime target at Maz. And like, that's not necessarily going to be good for creativity or good for content. And like Netflix, like I do think its figures recently, it's still doing well on subscribers and stuff like that, but anecdotally what I'm hearing is like people aren't that keen on it anymore. Like, people do want good content, and Barbie and Oppenheimer are great content, and it's really great for cinema.
We'll come back to Barbie in a second. I want to know, is it suitable for kids? Yeah, great. Okay, that's my Monday sorted. Just on Netflix, though, there is an issue with the writer's strike in that it's not really hurting Netflix at the moment because they're saving money. They've actually added value since all of this started, and that is going to be a problem. I mean, basically, you know, if it's something like if An Post goes on strike, you know, there's no way you're going to get your post delivered. People are still finding ways to get content. They will still get people to write content just outside of the unions that they use. So I'd be interested to see how it plays out, because obviously using AI to create scripts. I mean, they used AI for the artwork, for the intro for the latest Marvel thing, the Secret Invasion. And to be honest, I always skip through those things, so I didn't really notice. But when I went back and looked at it, it does look a bit, you know.
It's their worst one.
It's weird.
Those intros have been really strong for those.
Yeah, it's a weird, but that's a slightly different thing in that it's artwork rather than word output. But I do think at the moment Netflix have every reason, just for now at least, to sit still and do nothing, because they're currently saving money by not paying writers to do anything. And they have this massive content machine. A lot of it is absolute rubbish. I mean, some of the stuff that comes up in my For You, you know, trending now and For You, I'm like, if this is all being suggested to people, no wonder it's trending, because they're all watching the first 3 minutes going, what in the hell is this? And then getting out of it. Doesn't mean that they're still watching all of it.
And again, it's that element of like, they're not they're approaching content with this tech mindset, which is kind of like reach as much scale as possible, kind of game the system, and this kind of a game the user. You're probably seen as a user in Netflix's eyes as much as a viewer, and that's why you get the kind of common refrain when you talk about Netflix documentaries and stuff like that. It's like it's a 3-hour or 6-episode documentary that could have been like all condensed into 1 hour. There's a reason for that, because Netflix knows it will get those 6 hours out of you. And then that looks good in its end of year report and how long people are spending on the platform. So they're actually like the same way a platform will kind of have interstitial ads and stuff like that, and like have a certain length of the content to put those ads in there. And like sometimes the content has actually been engineered to be that long to show you just enough ads. Like it's just this like, we have to stop looking at the content that's being created with like a purity of like it was just put out there to be creative and to bring you something good. Sometimes it was just put out there to extend the length of time you spent on a platform that wants to extract as much money from you as a user as possible.
So we're all being manipulated, basically,
Constantly.
including the workforce, is the short answer.
Yeah, fun.
Yay. Anybody else?
Thank you, ladies, for a very interesting discussion. I was interested in how AI is going to impact academia in terms of students' work, students' exams, and also the area of research.
There is a huge plagiarism issue, obviously,
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when it comes to that side of things, there are tools that are getting better as the AI has improved. So have the tools to pick up if AI is being used to write things. I think there is a use. There is a use though there for AI.
There's a challenge there because, as I said earlier, like humans can write things that look like an AI wrote them very easily, and especially people who use English as a second language, they're constantly in these systems getting flagged as an AI because they maybe use their language a bit more formally because it is their second language. So yeah, there's lots to be done there in the detection side of things. This week, was it OpenAI said its detection doesn't work? Basically, outright said it doesn't
encouraging.
work, we're not good at it. Now, again, like the detection of AI is something that's going way back as well. It's a technology that's been built on for years and years and years. A lot of it's focused on deepfake detection because that's like really kind of, when you talk about manipulation and stuff like that, that's really scary stuff. Microsoft has some good tools there. Intel works on some good tools there. I just think that detection challenge is going to be the hardest thing. The best way is to completely change how you assess people. Like if you are taking digitized submissions, like they can be completely put together by a bot or any kind of system. There's so many versions of these systems now, and at what level do you call it assistance compared to generation or plagiarism, as you said as well? And then there's the whole question of like what these models were built on and the copyright issues there. It really calls into question how we assess academia and prowess there, and it kind of brings you back to like, are you going to have to put people in a room to handwrite things? Are you going to have to do one-on-one interviews with people? And I really think that's probably the way it's going to go.
I do think there is a role there for AI though in academia, because it can give you the start of something. But then obviously the skill then is particularly with academic papers stuff is, kind of expanding it out into something that will stand up by itself, and also something that you can prove, which, as we've established, is obviously a downfall when it comes to AI.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's so many challenges there, but it's also like, I mean, there's an element here as well where like when Wikipedia first came out, and a lot of educators were like, stop using Wikipedia as a reference. It's not a reference because it's user generated, and all the problems that are within that. And people did learn to use Wikipedia well. Like it is a really helpful resource to point you in the right direction of other resources that might actually give you the answers that you need. And the people that do that volunteer work are absolute angels. Love Wikipedia, give them money. But that's the thing, like we are going to need to learn how to use this stuff, and the problem that I mentioned earlier of the way it's being presented to people about what it does, and the borrowing of the terms that are built by marketing teams that we use, like even calling this shit artificial intelligence, I hate it. Like that's a stupid name for what it is.
Machine learning.
Yeah, and Apple, you'll notice, don't use the term artificial intelligence because they're trying to be like very much ahead of the game there, and that's smart. And like people think of this whole idea of artificial general intelligence, like never going to happen. Sorry, certainly not in my lifetime. I don't believe. I just think like we're at a really strange point where the narrative is very much taken over by the people selling this technology, and they're telling you what it is and what it does, and not enough people who really understand it telling you what it actually is and what it actually does and how you really should be engaging with and interacting with it.
Thanks. Anybody else? Okay, so I think since... Oh,
Can I guess?
yes, yep, absolutely. Fitbit.
Why we're so negative to the AI? For example, you just mentioned Wikipedia, right? And it's mostly human-to-human information. So when I was studying in university, we were told that humanity is coming to the new era of using technology, using information. So it's coming from the era of like information, gathering information, to the era of knowledge. Like anyone can get to the point to get any information they need, and it's checked, and it's like not individually given, you know? Do you understand me?
Oh, yeah.
So it's sometimes some kind of objective information. So it looks like maybe an idea that anything new comes arising, yeah, in our, I don't know, in human use as a technology, for example, it's taken negatively as our nature to wait something bad from the new things we don't understand or we cannot control.
I'm so glad you asked me that question, because yeah, I do realize I'm very cynical when it comes to talking about AI, and I probably do sound like I absolutely hate it, but I actually don't. I think it's amazing technology. It's mind-blowing what has been achieved with this technology, and the advances in the last year alone have been unbelievable. What I'm really cynical about is the big tech side of it and how they take it over and how they use it and abuse it and try to present it back to us in a way as like, this is for you, this is to help you, and it's not. It's to make these big companies richer and richer. But if I can just kind of finish off what I'm saying there, like, I use AI. We all probably do use it in some shape or form, and a lot of the media is talking about things like generative AI and ChatGPT and stuff like that, but AI in medical care is phenomenally useful, because it can actually, like, if an AI can look at the entire history of radiology scans and try and create a predictive model from that tells you which scans are actually forecasting a problem down the line, something a human being would really, really struggle to be able to do. That's an incredibly assistive technology that we absolutely want to be in the hands of physicians and clinical diagnostics teams and stuff like that. So there's loads of incredible uses for this, and like, that stuff isn't actually getting talked about so much in the media right now, because that's not actually very sexy or fun, and Elon Musk's not involved in it, and like, it just doesn't get the attention that it deserves. So I'm actually really pro a lot of this technology. And one question I didn't actually come to you for earlier, you talking about startups and stuff like that. There is a real future for AI and for jobs in AI and stuff like that, that looks at that human involvement in it, and the labeling of data and the curation of data. Because at the moment, it's just like a lot of crap being fed into a very clever system that then produces things that can be good, can be terrible. You kind of have to figure it out from there. But what it's doing is impressive. It's just that the outputs can be a bit of a Russian roulette. If we start inputting clean data, curated data, really specific data into those systems, which is what has been happening in the medical world, that's when they become incredible and really powerful. And that takes a huge amount of work. Like, you're talking about just unimaginable weights of data. Now, you'll use AI to help you to do that. But when we sort out this data issue, this will become very, very powerful, and that needs work as well. But also, you kind of touched on the age of knowledge thing. Another problem I have there is, like, if we keep pushing to people this idea of generative AI and like, you can spin up a website in minutes and you can do this and you can do that and you can write 1,000 emails, well, that knowledge, that data that's available online that we're trying to parse through and feed into these systems and make sense of is just getting more and more polluted. Now, there's big questions asked there about like, well, who gets to write the right answers and the facts and stuff like that? Because, you know, as we all know, like, you know, history is written by the victors and all this kind of stuff. So huge philosophical questions to answer there. That's the stuff I'm really excited about in AI, and the really big questions that I'd like to be talked about more than like what Elon Musk wants to do next with it.
This is actually the help to the internet, as for me, because I read, for example, for such a kind of job, it's mostly based in Malaysia, maybe many other Asian states actually cleaning the internet with like special people cleaning all the new appearing video and articles, like cleaning it and trying to keep it out of the civil use and like a darknet stuff and so on. So actually this can help to clean it better because human makes mistakes. And this ChatGPT, for example, I tried to use it many times, and it looks like the problem is coming to that it reflects the questionnaire.
Yes.
And the more we can use it.
It's not conversational. It's always responsive to your inputs. Yeah.
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 Yes, and I'm about to expire from the heat up here, so I don't know about anybody else, but it's very warm.
Yeah. Oh, no, it was just adding to that point. It's definitely, remember when you're interacting with the conversational systems that they are reflecting back your inputs and not necessarily kind of generating a new. And I find it really funny the amount of male journalists who are saying that the AI is flirting with them. It's probably based on their inputs.
One last question for you before we finish up. In a cage fight between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, which I sincerely hope does not happen because, who would win?
If they really kick the shit out of each other, society?
There we go. I was hoping for an asteroid, but, you know, that's actually better, yep. Right, thank you all for coming. Thanks for having us. It's been great, if a bit warm. And thank you very much, Elaine.
Thanks.